Good morning. I am here drinking my coffee. If you know me well at all, you know that I don't drink coffee. And this is a very rare moment in time that you might want to capture. But I think it goes well with the fact that as parents of school-aged children, we're a little bit on edge right now. We need anything and in any ways that we can keep our sanity during this wild, very different, unique back to school era. So this is actually decaf coffee. Thank you, Girl Pulse, for the mug. They're awesome scheduling tool for all your social media. And I am just using this time to bring on a guest today that is going to really help us with our mindset, with our self-care, and just hopefully give you some really good tips and tricks to take away to refresh your mind and really get into the right mindset to have a really good school year. So I cannot wait to bring her on and talk about all these things. So please share with me what your school situation is, and maybe some things that you're really wanting to look forward to and ask questions for my guest Elizabeth today. I really look forward to it, and I'll bring her on in just a moment. So here we go. I'm going to bring on Elizabeth. I cannot wait for you to meet her. Yahoo! Hello. Here we are.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. It's exciting to be here.
Good. I'm so excited to have you here. And we also have one of my friends, Tim Stone. He's here, and we've been going back and forth together on, the decision-making process of school, and him having, two small kids, and I have a 6-year-old as well. We're, trying to share those tips and tricks and things that we can really get through and make this a great school year. So I'm super excited for you to help us really focus and talk about our health, our mental, stability during this time, and just really get us kind of recentered and focused to have a really great school year. But before we get into it, I really want to introduce you to your audience. So tell us, your name and your business and your history as far as, your family and things like that.
Sounds great. My name's Elizabeth Atwell, and the name of my business is called Empowering Transformation. And I am a parent with a lot of older kids, so I think about all of you with younger kids and think, oh, I can understand why they'd be stressed. So I have 4 kids that are age 25, 23, 21, and 19. And we've certainly had our share of stress with the college kids going off and not knowing what that's going to look like and having to navigate that with them. So I can really relate to what's going on with parents of younger kids, because I think part of the challenge for us all is human beings need certainty to feel secure. And the problem with our world today is we don't have certainty, and we have to let go of that need to control that, to be able to understand you got to do it one day at a time, because tomorrow it could change. And if you can let go of having to have a full future picture, it eases some of the stress that you're going to feel on yourself. So I think having 4 kids, I used to be a teacher myself. So I'm kind of in that unique position of knowing what it looks like backstage and knowing what it looks like as a parent as well.
Wow, that's some incredible experience. And yes, you're right. Having older kids as well is, having to put them into a situation where you're uncertain. I think that's the biggest challenge that we have right now in general. And as parents is, we're used to being able to plan ahead and to have the schedule and to have all these things set in place. Whereas we are right now, we don't have any of that. That's just gone. We've got to, I think that's great advice that you gave, is to take every day, as day by day, and not worry about what the future holds, because that's really like the definition of stress, right? Trying to control something that's completely outside of your control, right?
Right. And part of what I call it is future tripping, where you go out into the future where you don't have that control. And what's most important is you stay in your present moment, and especially for your kids, because the truth is, if you're spinning in your head about what's going to happen in the future, that's going to create anxiety and stress for them. And then that's going to create more anxiety and stress for you, and it becomes a vicious circle.
God, yeah, definitely. So how, I know that you talked about, we want to share, we're creating these stories in our head, and I feel like that definitely is part of what we're doing is we're trying to control these situations. So how can we get out of that mode of, you know, we create that story in our head, and how, you know, how do we avoid that? Before you answer that question though, Tim's here and he knows the backstage and the front stage as well, because his wife is a teacher. And, you know, they have 2 kids, so they're seeing it from both ends too. And they're in Pennsylvania. School is all in for them, and they're going to switch to all Zoom as soon as one case is in school. And right. I think that that's a really good plan because their numbers have been pretty low too. So I think that that's definitely a safe bet too. His wife is a high school teacher, and she's nervous about going back, of course. Social distancing is not happening in many circumstances here. And I think that's part of the control, right? I think that's part of what stresses people out is that, you know, you're in these situations that you cannot literally control someone else and their ability to follow the rules or to take precautions and things like that. So how do you help us reframe these stories in our head to reduce our stress, Elizabeth?
So let me address just the concern around high school age kids, and because I can relate to that, because college age kids, especially because my youngest is a freshman, and so he's still at that sort of edge between high school and college, and I think one of the realities of kids at that stage is they think they're invincible, and so it's our job as parents to say, here's the truth and here's the reality. You are not. Like, I've already had my daughter being back at her college for 4 days, and she's already had to have a COVID test because she was exposed to somebody. Now, fortunately, it came back negative. But I think it's up to us to be really proactive with our children around this. And certainly as a high school teacher, my advice for your wife would be, don't hesitate about getting up in those kids' faces and saying, here's the truth of the situation. If you don't do this, we're going to go back to being online. If you don't do this, you could be exposing a grandparent. You could be exposing a friend who has a weakened immune system or respiratory issues, so that kids start getting a grasp of what the reality is instead of what their invincible mind is telling them. As far as the story that we tell ourselves, so I think what happens is it's very easy for a human being, it's part of our nature to go to the worst case scenario, because that's our amphibian brain at work, you know, fight or flight and survival mode and whatever. And the truth is that you actually have a conscious choice that you can make. And it's really important to remember that. You can let yourself spin in the negative, and then the more that you say in your head one negative thing, the more likely you're going to find another negative thing. It's called stacking. So you can stack negative thoughts, or you can choose to stack positive thoughts. So when you're telling a story, let's say it's about going back to school, you could tell yourself all of the scenarios of how it's a hotbed of COVID potential. Instead of saying, reminding yourself, okay, the teachers have this under control. Everybody has to wear a mask. They're social distancing in their classrooms. They're changing the schedule so that kids aren't having lunches at the same time, aren't passing through the halls at the same time. And so you've reframed and retold the story that you're telling yourself in a more positive way. I can give you an example of this from a client of mine. She was working with a colleague, and she kept telling herself the story that this colleague wanted power and wanted to show off that she was the best in the world. And I said to her, do you think there's something else that's going on with her? And she struggled for a bit. And I said, is it possible that her need to always be the best is actually a sign of her insecurity and her anxiety, and that you can approach her with compassion as opposed to with this defensiveness? And it completely changed their relationship, because she was able to approach this woman with, okay, I'm going to think compassionately about her. I feel badly that she needs to show off like this, and I don't have to get locked into any kind of struggle here. So that's another example of how we can really make a conscious choice to shift what we're telling ourselves about whatever our situation is, whether it's the school situation or whether it's a work situation or whether it's even within our own family.
Yeah, that's really helpful, and I talk about that a lot, actually. I didn't know that the actual term was stacking, but like thinking about, putting yourself in a positive mindset and thinking about good things. I always say, look for the good and you can find it, and you will find it, and lots more usually too, because of that stacking principle of being able to look at a positive thing, and then it's like an upward spiral, as opposed to you start looking at something negative and then you're like in a downward spiral and you're stacking those negative thoughts on top of each other. But I really like what you're saying with making sure that you remind yourself of like the reality of the situation and not let yourself kind of go crazy. And I do want to mention that I think we hear your dog in the background, but I wanted everyone to know that that's the dog playing.
He's like attached to my hip, and he's old, and so he's struggling to get up, and that's what you can hear.
Poor thing. I thought he was playing.
One thing I wanted to point out about stacking is it's not just our thoughts. It's actually what we say out loud and the actions that we take, because language has a lot of power to it. And if you find yourself saying things that are more on the negative end, that's going to impact your thoughts and it's going to impact your behavior. And if you are taking positive action, let's say it's simply by being kind to other people, it's all encompassing into how you approach the world. So your mind gets shifted at the same time that your behavior and the way you speak gets shifted. So really, when you're thinking about stacking, think about it on those three levels of behavior: thought, words, and action.
Oh, that's really good too. Yeah, exactly. Because you can have those negative, that negative talk track, think positive, but still like vent or like be, have those things come out of your mouth. And when they do, it's all attached together with your mindset too. So yeah, that's really, really good. Oh, Mary's here. Hey, Mary. Yes, definitely mindset for us to get into this school season with a great mindset. And we're going to talk about health too, because I want to make sure that we cover that as well. Oh, Tim, you're so nice. Tim, Amy's one of the most positive people I know, even in the Corona world, with deciding on homeschool. And this is a topic I'm so passionate about because, everyone had a different experience in school ending at the end of last year, and every family is different. Like, this is my whole mindset around this. There's lots of different opportunities and, options out there, depending on where you live. Some people have more options than others. But deciding like what your choice is for school is so important to just look at your family and your situation and what's going to be the best for them. There are so many people, there's so many people thinking, oh, well, what if I do this and someone else is going to say this? And what if I do this? And I can't, especially on social media, there's a lot of that. And that in itself can just be really negative because, we really need the opportunity, and we need to build each other up and really support each other right now. Because, having that decision. It's a difficult decision. It has to be made on an individual basis, and you really have to do what's right for your own family. So
Absolutely.
we decided to do homeschool just for the schedule flexibility, because the way that we went through it last year wasn't going to work for us this year, and that's just what we decided. And I think not everyone's going to do that, and not everyone wants to do that, and that's okay. Just do what's works best for you and your family.
I think, especially in COVID land that we're in right now, there is no place for judgment if we want to have a healthy environment. And that kind of goes back to the stories that we tell ourselves, because if you're standing in a place of judgment on another family and their choices, you must be telling yourself some kind of story about them in comparison with you, because you think that they have the same experience as you do. Well, the reality is every single family is different, and what they're dealing with, maybe it's not someone who works from home and can navigate that. They may not actually be able to homeschool because they have to go out somewhere to go to work. And if they don't do that, then they can't pay the bills, and that increases stress, and that's going to impact the kids in a negative way. So you really have to suspend judgment and approach everybody with compassion. That's my one big thing about how we treat each other, is be compassionate and understand that everybody has their own story.
Yes, exactly. That's something that we can, if we all leave with this one thing, and I know people in my community here, they are all about being compassionate, but spread that compassion and that, that caring nature all over as much as you can, because that in itself, it has a ripple effect as well. So, spreading the positive and being supportive in, every possible way is so, so important. So I really like how that's really your theme, basically, is being compassionate for other people through your thoughts, through your words, through your actions. That's wonderful. So thank you so much for that. And last but not least, our mental health is definitely tied to our physical health. And although we maybe all shouldn't be drinking tons of coffee, there is lots of other things that we can do to improve our health. So can you share with us kind of your thought process and your process about, staying healthy during this time?
Sure. So I think there's two levels of health, obviously, and they're interconnected. You've got the physical side, and then you've got your mental, emotional side. So let's deal with the physical first. I think it's really important during this time that you do three significant things. One, not that I'm not a coffee drinker, because I am, but it's really important that you drink water. And the real rule of thumb is about half your body weight in water, in ounces. Mm-hmm. And I can give an example. I have a client that's diabetic, and her blood sugars were completely out of control. And the only thing that we worked on 1 week was the drinking water piece. And in 1 week, by simply up leveling the amount of her water intake, her blood sugars came within range consistently every single day. So it's really, truly amazing what a difference drinking water makes in terms of your overall health. And be careful. Sometimes people confuse hunger and thirst. When they're actually thirsty, they're grabbing something to eat. Check in with yourself, become aware of your body and what your body's signals are, and try drinking a glass of water first, and then you may find that you don't need to eat anything. So drinking water is a big one. Getting adequate sleep is another really important one. And if it means an hour less on your social media at the end of the day, get rid of it. It's not great for getting to sleep anyway. It's really important that you make that a priority. And then the third one, and this stuff is so obvious that it's almost like, why am I telling you? But I'm telling you because it's so obvious and so important, and that is a nutritional diet. My spin is a little bit different, because I know people are very into counting calories. My spin on your diet is count the chemicals that are in the things that you're putting in your body. Your goal should be to have everything be as clean as possible. So have it be something that's in its purest form, like berries. There's no additives to berries. Whereas if you get a fruit cup, then you're getting extra syrup and you're getting fructose and you're getting all the preservatives that go along with it. And that's not a clean way of eating. And in fact, it messes with your blood sugar so that then you become more on that roller coaster, and that impacts your emotion. When you get to low blood sugar level, instead of having it regulated, you're more easily going to snap or get irritable or cranky. And you especially don't want to do that with your kids. And you don't want your kids getting to that place either. So it's important that you're regulating as much as you can, because obviously if they're at school, there is some lack of control, but as much as you can, keep their diet as clean as possible too, because that's not going to help their learning process. So that's the physical piece. I think on the mental and emotional, we've talked about the stories that we tell ourselves, and I think that's key to minimizing your stress. And positive stacking will be extremely helpful too, to make sure that you're approaching things as positively as you can. And then give yourself grace. This is a stressful time. It does not serve you to beat yourself up about, oh, I lost my temper today, I'm a bad mother, and then you go into another spin. If you happen to get cranky, how you handle that is you go back to your child and say, you know what? I want to acknowledge to you that mommy was kind of cranky today, and I'm really sorry about that. I promise that I'm going to try and do it better than next time. I think another thing that can really help your mental health is give yourself the opportunity throughout the course of a day, when you're starting to feel like you're ramping up, give yourself a 5-minute break. Well, it's only 5 minutes, and it actually will make you more productive doing whatever you're doing. So if you're getting there, just go and stand on your deck for 5 minutes. Or if you can't find any space in the house, I sometimes joke with my clients, but it works. Just say, I got to go to the bathroom. And then slip into the bathroom, close the door, give yourself a chance to do some deep breathing, because part of what deep breathing does is it tricks your body into believing that things are calm. It gets you out of that flight or fight syndrome in your brain simply by deep breathing and allowing your body to slow down and get calm. And then you can go back into the situation in a much more different place. So those are some of the, I have a ton of tricks and strategies, but those are some of the ones that are sort of top of mind that you can implement immediately, that are probably one of the most effective that I've got.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think I'm going to want to ask you to share some of your tips on how we can get into that clean eating mode. And I've always heard clean eating, and that means reducing chemicals, eating something to the most original form that it is. But counting chemicals, I think, is a lot easier than counting calories, and that keeps us away from those, foods that aren't so good for us. So I think that's really a really great perspective on it. Tim says he needs to drink more water and eat cleaner. It's a tough during COVID land, but yeah,
I think my response, Tim, is you can decide it's tough, but you don't have to decide it's tough, because really it's all about one trip to the grocery store and making sure that when you pull the things off the shelves, you take a look at the label and choose the things that you're going to have in your house, so that everything that's accessible to you is on the cleaner end of things. Mm-hmm. And initially, if you're really used to highly processed, a lot of refined sugar, you may find it a challenge in the first little bit, but if it's not there, you can't get it, and you will find it makes such a difference in how you feel. It will become easier than you think it might.
Yeah, that's great advice. I definitely follow that. If you don't buy it at the store, you don't have it to eat. That's for
Right.
sure. And yeah, it is tough. I mean, that's it's a difficult thing, a lot more difficult maybe in the past because of our mental state. But aligning our mental state and then supporting that with the food that we eat to stay healthy is so important. It's gonna make such a difference in how we feel and how we interact with Jess is saying that she agrees about keeping your kids' diet clean as possible. Their crankiness and mood swings are for sure influenced by what they eat. Oh yeah, and their little teeny tiny bodies. Like you cannot fill those little teeny bodies with sugar, or with
Right.
any kind of chemicals, because it's exponentially harder on their bodies depending on what you're feeding them, and to process all those chemicals too.
Well,
And
I think something that you can ask yourself is when you're talking about how you're treating your own self, would I want my child to be treated this way? So would I want my child to be served a highly processed diet? Well, then flip that and say, well, if I don't want my child to have that, I need to care enough about myself that I'm going to treat myself exactly the same way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we do take consideration for our kids, we want to make sure that our kids eat healthy, but then we don't either model that behavior or we don't take the same advice because we care so much about them, but we need to care as much as we do about them as ourselves, for sure. So, yeah.
Oxygen mask theory, that if you don't put your
Oh,
oxygen mask on first, then you can't help anyone else. So if you're not taking care of yourself, and obviously it's really challenging as a parent, but even if it's that brief 5 minutes in your day, and then once a week having just an hour and a half to yourself, it's really important that you do that because you're the one that's carrying the burden of what the big picture looks like. And if you want to be able to show up as your best version of yourself for your kids, you need to be taken care of too.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's such great advice. And Jess says she hides in the bathroom at least once a day.
Yeah, I encourage it every couple of hours.
Right? Oh, that's funny. That is really funny. Jess and I talked about this too with, we both have 6-year-old boys that are only children, and just we were talked about different things that we could come up with to do to kind of get into this school year on the right foot. And I talk about one of the things that's really worked for us and something that we didn't stop from the time that school is ending in spring through the summer. We continued this all the way through summer as a routine. And I think a morning routine for yourself and a routine for your child, especially the young ones, they thrive on that schedule, on that knowing what to expect and knowing, if they can tell time or they know, I had my son set a timer. He has a timer that he sets for himself. So 30 minutes, he's going to go read. In 30 minutes, he's going to do this. And he sets his timer and has his activities. He doesn't know technically what time it is, but he knows, by way of his timer and his schedule of knowing, what to expect next. So I think routines are really, really important right now. That's helped us out a ton. And doing whatever you can for your coping mechanism, whether it's going to taking a walk if you have a moment to yourself, or hiding in the bathroom if that's what you have the option of doing. Whatever it is, we really need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. Like you said, to the oxygen mask theory, is taking care of ourselves first, making sure that we can breathe, that we can take care of other people. That's just so vitally important right now.
Absolutely. And I think truthfully, I think adults thrive on routine too. I mean, that's what's challenging for a lot of parents is that they lose routine over the summer. And of course, now we've had like this 5-month summer. And unless you are conscious to structure it in, it's going to go by the wayside. And I think it's important to structure it for yourself as well as for your child. And then that's a modeling thing too, right? Then they become, oh, this is how we are more effective in our lives.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, definitely. That's the key to my sanity right now, is having that routine and continuing that routine all the way through the summer. So I highly recommend, if your school has a schedule for you, that's great. But if they don't, make your own and make one that really works for you, and, break it up as much as possible. And know that that's something that'll be good for you and good for your child as well, for your household, really, when it comes down to it. So I really, really enjoyed this conversation, Elizabeth. I really value all that advice. I really appreciate your time that you've taken to give us all this awesome advice to keeping us really on track and in the right mental space to tackle this school year. That's definitely going to be one for the book. So thank you so much for being here. And everybody watching, if you have coaches in your life, you have business coaches, life coaches that you really respect and you want to share them with the world, I would love to be connected with them to get them on our show and to really learn from them. And that's really what this is all about. So feel free to share this video or tag them in the comments. I would love to be connected. So thanks again, Elizabeth. Really look forward to keeping in touch with you. And thanks again for your time. Bye.
That would be great. My pleasure. Bye.